Audio is hot. Mm-hmm. Go. You bet. Hi guys, back for another one. This one's going to be a special edition. Tyler here with Explore Scientific. Today we took, I don't know how many questions these are. I think they're about 15 or 20 Google questions that was sent to us, and we're going to go through each and every one of them. And I'm going to explain the answers and the do's and the don'ts. So the first question is, why can't I see anything? All I see is black through my telescope. Well, lucky for y'all, I have a little tabletop telescope here. We have the diagonal put in. We've got the eyepiece in there. Everything's assembled just like the instructions tell us to, but I can't see anything out of it. It's daylight. I'm pointing it at a tree. I know I'm looking at a tree with my eyeballs, but I can't see anything with my actual telescope. Funny thing is, majority of telescopes have what this little thing right here, a dust cover or lens cap. That, folks, will help you bring in the light, is if you just take off that little bitty cap. The majority telescopes do have them, even on this little NT114. It's not on there right now, but it does come with one.
Hey Noah, can you go grab a lens cap for an NT114?
Actually, is this one?
Is there one back there?
Nope. But they do have caps. And that's one
Some of those caps have a centerpiece, remember?
Some of the caps are always different. They're not going to be all like this, where you can just pop on. There's some that have a little grab here in the middle that you can just pull off, and this whole thing becomes obviously visible that you can see.
Sometimes people take off those covers in the middle.
And sometimes when you take off the cover in the middle, I don't have one. That's the unfortunate part.
I know. I didn't think about that until just now.
It's okay. But, so you have the bigger outside diameter, and then you have one in the middle.
You bring that one back out.
Bringing it back out.
That's what it should look like when you have
Yes,
it open.
fully open aperture of 114 millimeters.
If there's still anything on it.
But if you take off the smaller aperture, which you could still use it when you're looking at the moon, but if you want to see everything, you have to take the whole thing off on there.
It's easy to get mistaken.
It is very easily to get it mistaken, you bet. So that's question number one. Wata. Oh, it hit me. So the next one is, what is the difference from a spyglass, and yes, this is an actual spyglass, and a telescope? So this is Kent's. He actually acquired this from one of his buddies. Oh, I took it apart. It's old. It is very old. The brass is very worn and antiquish. It just pulls apart. It's no big deal. But this is an antique pirate spyglass, if you want to call it that. Now, the main difference between the two is the aperture. Now, what is aperture? Well, that's the fixed point here at the very front of the telescope that lets in all that light. So the bigger this is, the more light that can come in, the more that you could see. And it's very small exit pupil. It's very, very tiny. You have to sit here and hold it, and you're dancing all over the place, and it's just a collector's item. But you can use it for telescope purposes or looking at the stars purposes. But you have fixed focal length, you have a fixed eyepiece, it's just everything's fixed. But with the telescope, you do have a fixed aperture, but you can switch the actual eyepieces, get more magnification, get closer. Say again?
They always come with two.
They always come, majority of them come with two, some come with more. But it gives you a little bit closer magnification. But magnification, what does that mean? Well, in simple terms, it gets you closer to the object. That's what it basically means. We can definitely go over that as far as math formulation later in another episode. But that's that question. Now, this is also another great question. What if I wear glasses? You know, sometimes it is hard for individuals that have an astigmatism or something's wrong with their vision. They have to wear glasses. Well, luckily, folks, there are specific eyepieces. We're just going to use this one for instance that has long eye relief. So you can wear your glasses if you need to actually look at the said or use the said eyepiece. Sorry. Sometimes, I mean, Paul can even actually tell you that he can take off his glasses and use a regular, just normal eyepiece through a diagonal in a telescope, and he can adjust the focus with the draw tube to his eye. So it's achieving focus that way. Some things you have to be aware of when you're using your glasses is you have 2 points you have to actually focus to, the lens and then your eye. So it can get rather confusing, but it is possible. So yes, you can use eyepieces, but they have to be designed for long eye relief. So you can use your glasses. And then there's another great question. Why can't I focus my telescope? How do you adjust focus? Well, so we're going to take this one off the mount here. That way I don't have to move the mount back and forth. It just makes it easier. Everybody can see the visual representation. Paul's getting his workout today. I'm sorry, Paul. He's moving all the stuff back and forth. So on most telescopes, you have what is called focus knobs, which is here and here. Now, what is a focus knob? Well, it's in the word, focus. So we're just going to rack out the focus draw tube, which is this silver one, and this is a Newtonian. Refractors are the exact same, Dobbs are the same, they all have focus knobs. So you'll put your eye into said eyepiece, and you'll point the telescope at something, look in the eyepiece, and you'll just rack focus in to see if it comes in focus. But if it doesn't, you rack it out. The one trick that I always find that helps is you can either start completely racked out or the focus draw tube completely out, and then you just slowly bring it back in, or vice versa. You start all the way in, work it all the way back up. And that's how you, honestly, that's how you focus a telescope. And it's the same with microscopes as well. So I'm just going to keep this close by in case I need it for another demonstration purposes. What can I do to get planets closer? Paul, that's a great question. Do you happen to know that answer?
Rockets.
Rockets, of course. It's always rockets. So, with all our telescopes here at Explore Scientific, the Nat Geo, the NT114 that I had up there earlier, this FL 8640, most of our telescopes come on the first lights, and the Nat Geo versions come with what is called either a focal extender or a Barlow. What is a Barlow? A Barlow and a focal extender increases magnification by, this one's a 3 times, so that one's going to increase it by 3.
Can you explain to them that is not going to work on their telescope?
Now, please bear in mind, this is a 2-inch one. This will not fit on the 8640. This will not fit on the NT114. This was for Essential Series that have a 2-inch diagonal that has the ability to marry with a 2-inch eyepiece. But that's how you're going to actually get closer to said objects. Another thing that helps is understanding focal length.
That's a Barlow, right?
This is a focal extender.
But the Barlow is what comes with your kit.
Barlows are what come with kits. This is a upgraded purchase that you can do, again, only for diagonals that accept 2-inch eyepieces. It's the only way that you can use this particular one. All Barlows are usually 1.25 inches, which is that size. See how much difference that is as far as barrel and diameter? It's huge. It's crazy. But
the NT114 is even smaller.
no, it's 1.25 inches.
Is it?
Yep. I'll prove it to you.
Let's see if I got a Barlow.
I will prove it to you. as we wait, I can talk a little bit about focal length and why it actually matters.
Break it down to very simple.
So focal length, what is focal length? Well, every telescope has a specific focal length to itself. This one's 114, or not 114. I believe this one's 600. We'll just round up and use easy numbers. So 600 millimeters of focal length. So with that focal length, and if I use a 2 times Barlow and then a 14 millimeter eyepiece, how you can convert your new magnification or power is you take your eyepiece number and you times it by 3, 2, or whichever. But focal length, the bigger your number on the millimeters in focal length. This is 600, and you want to look at planets. I want something that's 1200 or greater. So I'm looking for something in the focal length of 1200 or greater. So the bigger that number, the closer to the objects as you can actually see. And while we're waiting for Paul to come back with the actual Barlow, the other thing about Barlows is they're usually 1 or 2 elements inside the actual eyepiece itself. With focal extenders, there's anywhere from 5 to 6, depending on which one you get. We have a 2 times, 3 times, and a 5 times. And I believe he has acquired something else, which actually, I need the something else because I know that's one question. Yeah, that's how you see planets closer / bigger. Focal length, Barlows, and focal extenders. Now, another great question is, can you look at a star through a telescope? Do all stars look different through a telescope? Or these? The answer is yes. All stars are completely different. There's no star that is the exact same. There's blue stars, there's white stars, there's red stars, there's orange stars. Now, granted, how you can tell if the star is young versus when the star is old is color. So white to blue is new. They're young. They're babies. They've just been formed. Granted, they're probably a couple million years old in our time. And then like Betelgeuse or Betelgeuse in Orion, or Betelgeuse, whichever you prefer. That's a orange star. So it's on the older side. He's getting over the hill. It may be billions of years before it finally explodes. Who knows? But yes, you can see stars through a telescope. And all stars are different through the telescope. Another great question is, why can't you see color through telescopes? Well, the unfortunate part of that is humans. Our eyes cannot perceive color that far out. Now, granted, let's take this to more purpose. If I have a 20-inch mirror, which we have one, we took that out and we saw Orion's nebula. You can see color. The bigger that mirror is, the more light that it can soak in. The more contrast and saturation that you can actually see of your said object. So theoretically, you can see color with humongous mirrors. I haven't checked it out with a 20-inch or a 16-inch Dob or a 12-inch Dob. Granted, I'm in a Bortle sky zone around 5 or 6 to 7.
I don't know what that is.
We'll get into Bortle stuff later on down the road. I'm surprised that wasn't an actual question. So it's basically you can see color, but if you're talking about magazine color on objects that are in the night sky.
Here is the telescope.
Uh-oh, audio. Am I good now?
That's the James Webb.
So the James, those pictures, I believe, is of the Cygnus wall. We can't physically see that color with our naked eye through a telescope. Can't do it.
Will it look like the one on the bottom?
A lot fainter.
You couldn't see this with a naked eye because this is zoomed in and cropped.
Well, the other problem is that's a nebulae or nebulosity. Galaxies you can see, actually, but they are gray and fuzzy. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's just a gray fuzzy. Setting your expectations here instead of way up here. You can't perceive color. It's too far away. The human eye is...
Some red ones and whatnot.
Again, that's where it comes back to the bigger your mirror, the more that it can come in and the light can come in and see. That's when you'll actually start seeing the difference. So one of a great question here is, how do I use my cell phone to take pictures through a telescope? So I want to get back my NT114 that we have here. I'm going to move these eyepieces out of the way. And Paul actually brought me a handy-dandy smartphone adapter. Thanks, Paul.
Put it down in front of the telescope and I'll get it close up.
I will. I'm just getting it kind of ready here. So all of our First Light series, Nat Geo, Explore 1, and all of those will come with an actual smartphone adapter for your telescope. They all have suction cups right there. They all have suction cups so you can put your smartphone there. I have a case on mine or I'd be able to do it for you. But how it works, we might as well just break this down to the nitty-gritty. So your eyepiece, you have your said eyepiece here. You put it right down the collar, and I like to make sure that it's flush with the actual collar, and then I use the thumb screw, tighten it up, drop it down the draw tube, tighten it up with the collar of the draw tube, and then I'm ready to be an astrophotographer with an NT114. Well, let me see here. But it would literally just like that. That's what it does. I'm going to hold. Well, there it goes. It stays. There you go. That's what it does. Yep. Oh, gosh. That's what happens. That's what happens. So that is how you achieve with a smartphone, with a smartphone adapter. Yeah, it does take a little bit of finesse, especially with newer cameras that have the 3 lenses, and some of them have 4 lenses. They constantly move, and it's a booger. It really is a booger. You will. Can I look through a telescope through a window? I would highly ill-advise that.
You can, no.
I wouldn't recommend it. Here's the reasoning. Here's the reason. What do windows have on them? Screens usually, or some bar type thing for decoration purposes. You know, give the window some pizzazz and stuff. You know, we actually had a customer send us a picture of Mars. He was looking through his screen. Now, what it did to actually Mars was made it weird. I can't remember the exact terminology, but it literally just threw a whole bunch of spikes everywhere because you were looking through that said screen. Now, I understand that it's cold outside and, you know, it's winter. It's just one of those things that we have to bear because astronomy is, you have to take the good and the bad. Usually the clear nights are during the winter, but unfortunately that's when it's the coldest. That's why
Nebula season.
Bundle up. It's nebula season, and eventually it's starting to become galaxy season now. So spring's right around the corner, so it's starting to get a little warmer here. Yes, it's still cold some nights, but I wouldn't recommend looking through a telescope through a window.
But you can.
But you can, but you may have distorted vision. You may have distorted viewing.
If you look at the moon, it should be fine.
If you look at the moon, but again, if you're looking through a screen, maybe a different story. I wouldn't recommend it.
Depends on how close you are to the screen, I guess.
That is true.
Get far away, it acts like a filter.
Maybe. Does it have to be dark to see it through a telescope? No, it does not. You can actually use a telescope during the day. You can do terrestrial viewing. You can look at birds. You can look at trees. You can look at radio towers. You can look at ski lifts that are miles away. Just waving at people. Just, you know, you do not have to just use a telescope in the dark.
Yeah, they use them for bird watching.
Yep, one of our optics engineers, Sheldon, he actually takes pictures of birds during the day through his telescope. So yes, it is possible to use it during the night or the light. Why is it so hard to focus a telescope? Well, a couple of things. I'm going to bring back the old trusty NT114 here. So again, we're going to mention that all these come with, well, yes and no. So most of these telescopes, like Paul said earlier, come with multiple eyepieces. Some people think that this is a 26 millimeter. I always start out with the biggest number first. Why? Well, if you sit here and look at that picture, once Paul loads it up, it's just a Big giant piece of glass. It makes it easier for your eye to see through. Now the other eyepiece that comes with this particular telescope is a 9mm. That's like looking through this as far as eye relief, that little bitty hole. So that could also be the reason why you can't or find focus and why it's hard to see through the telescope.
Or it may be black.
Or it may be black, but we covered that one earlier. So always, 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 I recommend that you start with the highest number first. Find your object. Get in focus with your object. Look at it. Let the natural, let your dark, just let your eyes adapt to the dark. Granted, if you're looking at the moon, it's hard to do that. But look, just take as long as you want looking. It's about the journey, not who can finish first. And then swap eyepieces out to get closer to your object. Increase your magnification. And everything is moving, but again, we'll have to see if that's actually a question to see. But finding focus, always start out with your highest numbered eyepiece or lowest magnification. That's another term that you'll hear a lot with telescopes is magnification and power. So start with your lowest power eyepiece, which is the highest number on the eyepiece. Should you look at the sun through a telescope? Only if, and I mean this with complete, I can't say authority because I have no authority. You have to be very careful with the sun. The sun, it doesn't, here, this is what I did one day. I was pointing my telescope at the sun, didn't even think about it. Took the cap off, and I had the plastic cover that protects the diagonal just sitting over there. Not even less than 5 seconds. I already burned a hole through this little plastic cover. So if you decide that you want to look at the sun, either leave your lens cap, don't even point it at the sun until you have safety equipment over the objective lens, which I don't have a sun catcher here.
Yeah, hang on.
Uh-oh, hanging on. And we got Tupac in the background.
I know, right?
Lordy. Or solar glasses. You want to make sure that you're very, very safe with the sun because it will literally blind you in a matter of seconds. Or a sun catcher.
And it's permanent.
And it's permanent. You can't fix it. This is what you want to look at the sun with. Something that has some film texture that is supposed to be used for the sun. Not this. This. Again, not this. We want this. And this is why, folks, there are always pictures or stickers on all our telescopes that have do not look at the sun directly. You will literally ruin your vision, and once you ruin your vision, you cannot get it back. It is permanent. Optometrists cannot fix it. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. So please, if you want to look at the sun's great. It's the biggest, closest star that we got in our solar system. Play it safe, because you only have one set of eyeballs. They cannot grow back. They're not like teeth. They do not grow back. Why is my telescope blurry? Well, it could be dirty. That's one thing. So some telescopes, they may not be blurry. You may be either using, again, we're going to talk about eyepiece magnification. You may have too much power. You know how we talked about the 26mm and the 9mm? You may have started out with a 9 and you're looking at something that's like, God, that is awfully blurry. I can't get it in focus. And the other thing is, you may be just outside of focus or inside of focus, which outside of focus is you've gone past the focus point. Inside's obviously the complete opposite. So the other thing that it could be blurry is atmosphere. This is a tricky one. It's very hot. That's atmosphere. So when you ever see somebody laying down asphalt or a road or anything, and you can see that it's just the waves are just coming off like crazy, that is the atmosphere that does or will travel up and go into the outer atmosphere. So one thing that you can look at is stars. If you ever see stars twinkle, just like they're dancing, or it looks like they're changing color from white, green, blue. That is atmospheric seeing that you're looking through. And when you look at it through a telescope, it can look blurry, it can look muddy looking, like it's just not clean and crisp like it would be during an actual winter night. That's just the clean air. But if you don't see a star dancing or twinkling or changing color, that is the excellent time to actually use a telescope or a pair of binoculars, because you're not seeing through all that muddy mess of the atmosphere. That is one reason why your telescope may be blurry, or you started off with too high of an eyepiece. How do you focus to see planets? Well, that's also another tricky one. It depends on, what planet you're looking at. I always try to start... Pluto's going to be literally a star. You can see it.
It looks like everything else.
It just looks like a star. That's all it looks like. Jupiter, for instance. So how I try to focus on the lunar is I look at the edge of the planet themselves. I try to get it so if you go inside or outside of focus, you can kind of see what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like a little mirage just extending out, or just an out of focus point. It just extends past the outside of the moon, Jupiter, or whatever. I try to bring that edge as close as I can, and then I start looking at structure differences. With Jupiter, it's the bands. With the moon, it's all the craters. With Saturn, it's the rings. If I cannot split the Cassini rings, which is Jupiter's got two big rings that you can see. You got the outside layer, you got the Cassini, which is in the middle, which is just open space, and then you have the other actual rings. If I cannot split those rings and see the Cassini division or Cassini ring, then I'm probably out of focus. But the other thing that you have to be aware of when you're looking at planets is atmospheric seeing, or atmospheric disturbance. Because if you have a bad atmosphere, everything's going to look muddy, everything's going to be blurry, no matter how much you try to achieve that beautiful focus. And do you need to focus the telescope? If you want to see something, yes. You have to focus the telescope, or everything will be blurry, muddy, and you're not going to be happy with the results.
Show us on the little one.
Show us on the little one. What do you want me to show?
The other one.
Oh, the other one. This one. So if I'm trying to focus on something, if I'm looking at something at the far off distance and I want to see what I'm actually looking at, again, you mess with the focus knobs to bring out the draw tube to achieve that focus point. So if you're wanting to see something, whatever you're looking at, birds, planets, trees, telephone wire. Say what?
It's not automatic.
It is not. You are the automatic machine. You are constantly moving it back and forth. You have to mess with it. Everything is at a different focal length or focal plane. So your focus does change a little bit as far as planets. Stars are basically the same. Galaxies are going to be a little bit different because they're all at different planes of focal points. So they're all going to be different. And that's how and why you need to focus a telescope. Can you see a galaxy through a telescope? Yes, you can. It is gorgeous when you do. But again, I'm going to set your expectations here. Instead of here, you see no color. I'm sorry. All it is a gray, giant blob. That's what it is. But if you look at a galaxy long enough, like we'll just use Andromeda for instance, and you look at the spiral coming off of Andromeda, and you look at it long enough, and your eyes become night adapted, you can make out the actual arms in Andromeda. You can. You really can. I've done it. Even with that little NT114. It takes a minute because you have to sit there and look at it. I mean, again, folks, this is a patience journey. This is not a quick rush to the finish. If you want to really enjoy this kind of hobby, you have to be patient. You have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to make mistakes, because I promise you, they happen. They even happen with me all the time. Even when I'm trying to do astrophotography, I'm going to make a mistake. Bound and determined, going to do it. It's part of life. Just how you learn from it so you can better yourself to better the next experience for you or for someone else. But that was all the questions that we found, or actually people have sent in from the Google. Is there any questions, comments, or anything? Because I don't have my TV up.
Nope.
Nothing? Darn it.
That you need to be aware of.
Oh, fiddlesticks.
We do have the Star app.
Yep.
Star app 70.
Yeah, the Star App 70, that's a great little telescope. Why is it a great little telescope? Because I don't have it with me, but I know it enough. I know it enough that I can tell you about it. It's actually an app-driven based telescope. It's manual still, so you have to move it around, but you can use the app to actually use to point at said objects. So you can swivel around your pan handle, and it will tell you what you're actually looking at. And if you tap your screen on your phone, it will actually give you a little, I call it a Wikipedia, brief explanation of what you're looking at, why it's there, yada, yada, yada. So it's great for beginners that want to get into the hobby, that are not quite sure what they're looking at. With this specific app, it will help you understand of what you're actually looking at.
It only works with our telescope.
But it only works with a Nat Geo Star App 70 and the 50 as well. But it gives you a breakdown of how far like Mars is, the Moon is. Did you know Andromeda's galaxy? I've used this. I've stolen it from Kent countless times. Because nobody really knows how far something actually is, other than like what physicists use and science people use, like light years. Andromeda's galaxy, for you to physically see through a telescope or binocular, or if you are in a Bortle 1 sky, which we'll talk about that. Even in a rocket. It's 2.5 million years away. 2.5 million years. So that means that when I'm looking at Andromeda, it takes that little light of photon 2.5 million years to go from point A to point B, which is my eyeball. And then that's its only life. That's it. 2.5 million years. So theoretically, you're looking in the past. Isn't that crazy? You are literally, when you look at space, you are looking in the past. It is nuts. And that's why we love the James Webb Telescope. But again, my name is Tyler. Submit more questions. We're going to kind of make this a little thing. I'll get a little bit more lively next time. Submit more questions. Harder questions. Doesn't bother me in any way, shape, or form. I will educate you and make it easier for you to understand this hobby. Because it is a lot. A whole lot. My name is Tyler with Explore Scientific. I hope you guys have clear skies and keep looking up.
All right, so I wanted that so we could ask or answer this question here, which is going to be over the heads of the viewers I think we're talking to.
Yeah, we'll see. I may be able to break it down.
Give us a hard out so we can answer this. Can you talk about EAA?
Oh, EAA is very simple. It's electronic assisted astronomy. What is EAA? Well, EAA you can use with a cell phone. You can use with a digital eyepiece. You can actually use a web camera. So what it is you...
It makes some stuff that does, and then we that mouth back there.
Yeah. I mean, even the little IXOS 100 here. That's right here. You can use this for EAA. All EAA is you need a computer-driven mount or a go-to mount with a telescope that has the ability to put either a camera, like a planetary camera, cell phone, and all you're literally doing is slewing to your object that you're looking at, getting whatever program that you want to look at, like SharpCap, because it's free, ASI Air, which you can do with a tablet, a phone, computer. There's a whole bunch of different programs out there, but basically all you're doing is doing a live broadcast, in a sense, something live. That instead of looking at an eyepiece, you can throw it on a screen. You can throw it on a pillow sheet or just a big giant sheet and project something with a projector on there. It shows a live image of what either Saturn, Jupiter, the Moon, Pleiades, Orion, whichever. So it's basically just electronic. So you're taking the eyepiece out of the equation. So you don't have a bunch of people coming to your telescope, possibly kicking the tripod, which it happens. Everybody it's hard to see in the dark, but with EAA, it's a lot easier for everybody to see all at once. And then you can just have one person controlling it. You can make it easier. If people ask to slew somewhere else, you can just move it by yourself. No one has to mess with it. No one has to touch anything. It's literally just electronic. I love it. I actually did a stream the other night, basically with EAA, and it's simple. Everybody gets to look at it while I control everything. Is that the only question?
All the questions today?
That's all the questions. I hope that explains EAA, Electronic Assisted Astronomy. Again, guys, I hope you had fun. Please submit more questions. I like doing this kind of stuff. I like helping educate beginners because, again, this is an overwhelming hobby. All hobbies can be overwhelming, but that's why here at Explore Scientific, we try to make the hobbies easy to understand for beginners to get it the first time. Again, my name is Tyler. I hope you have clear skies. Keep looking up.